All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Dorr. I am the Director of Professional Development for the International Studies Association. For those of you who may not be familiar with the International Studies Association, or ISA as we're called, we are the largest organization dedicated to understanding transnational and global affairs, and we are currently in residence in global affairs at the University of Connecticut. So today I am here with Sophia Zahner, Michael Stratman, and Travis Hensley, and they are going to be talking about Kluge Fellowships at the Library of Congress. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, who will be leading today's session.
Hi, my name is Sophia Zahner, as Sarah said before. I'm the Educational Outreach Specialist at the Kluge Center. So I help manage outreach and partnerships for the center. Some of you may have seen me and Mike at the ISA's conference this past March, I think, in Chicago. I'm like forgetting when, what time is at this point. Um, so me, Travis, and Mike are here to discuss fellowship opportunities this year at the Kluge Center. Travis is the program manager for the center, and Mike is the program specialist. Together, they run the fellowship application and selection process. So they will give a little bit more detail, but before I turn it over to them to give detail about what fellowships are available and how to apply to those fellowships, I just wanted to give a little bit of information about the Kluge Center, who we are and what we do. I'm going to share my screen. So the Kluge Center is a center in the Library of Congress. We were founded in the year 2000, so we're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We are the residential research center at the library. So we bring in scholars from all over the world to do research in the library's collections and to, use the library's collections to, whether it's produce articles, books, etc., or to complete research they might have started elsewhere. So this is the what the center looks like at the library. And now I'm going to turn it over to Travis to talk about the fellowships.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Sarah. So, as Sophia just said, my name is Travis Hensley. I'm the program manager for fellowships, research, internships, and events at the Kluge Center. I have been with the center for 13 years, which is hard to believe. But so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the programs. The Kluge Center has a number of fellowship programs that are managed by external partners. Today, I'm going to be talking about the sort of main flagship program and our digital studies fellowship program. And I'll briefly touch on some of the other programs that are in the application portal. But given sort of this audience, we're going to focus on the Kluges and the Kluges digital since they make the most sense. So the flagship fellowship program at the Kluge Center are the Kluge Fellows. We select 12 individuals each year as a Kluge Fellow. They're broadly undertaking research in the humanities and social sciences. Interdisciplinary and cross-cultural research is particularly welcome in the Kluge Fellowship program. And is open to scholars in the humanities, social sciences, and professional fields such as architecture or law. So there is a terminal degree requirement for this program. And it is also early career, so that means an individual has received their PhD in the last 7 years. We can make considerations on that 7 years if there was maternity leave or health issues. That again, so there is some room to move outside sort of that 7 year window. We also have the Kluge Digital Studies Fellowship Program, and this fellowship provides opportunity for scholars to utilize digital methods. The library's large and varied digital collections and resources curatorial expertise, and an emerging community of digital scholarship practitioners. Once again, interdisciplinary and cross-cultural research is particularly welcome with this program, and is open to scholars from all disciplines. The digital studies does not have a terminal degree requirement, nor is there a 7-year window. So that's sort of open to anyone. And you also, again, don't need to have a terminal degree for that. You'll also see in the portal that we have the Philip Lee Phillips Fellowship, which is a 2-month fellowship utilizing the cartography material and the geography map division here at the library. So very niche. So if you happen to be doing stuff with maps, that you could be eligible for that. And then the Larson Fellowship in Health and Spirituality. So again, the main ones that you all will probably be interested in are the Kluges and then the Kluge Digitals. So we have sort of 4 main criteria that we're looking at when we're assessing our fellowship applications. The first criteria is the significance of the contribution that the project will make to knowledge in the field. The second is the quality of the conception, definition, organization, and description of the project. Third is the likelihood that the applicant will complete the project. And lastly, the appropriateness of the research for the Library of Congress collections. And this is an important one because, again, this is one of the main criteria that we're going to look at, and it's need of the use of the collections of the Library of Congress. And so really, applications that stand out, you can tell which individuals have had discussions with the curatorial and reference staff here at the library, because it's reflected in sort of the items in their bibliography and their justification for the need of the use of the collections. I highly recommend that you use the Ask a Librarian function on our website. It will put you in contact with the correct reference staff for collections that you may be using. The thing is, not everything we have is online. So really making that human connections with the staff working with these collections. They can tell you about unprocessed collections. So really making that contact with the individual, I think, is going to be extremely helpful. And again, that is something that we really do look at. And sometimes that's very unique items that we might have, whether it's, manuscript collection from an individual or a rare item, or sometimes it's just under one roof, right? Well, I couldn't go to any other institution and find these, so it's sort of a combination of either rare individual material or sort of, making the argument of at one library, I couldn't find all of these resources. The fellowships are open to both U.S. and foreign nationals. That being said, if you're a foreign national, you would have to be able to get a J-1 visa to be in residence. We can't sponsor if you're on an H-1B, just because that visa is unique to the institution that you might be based at now. So there would be some issues if that's the type of visas you're on. We're open to individuals that work at colleges, universities, primary, secondary schools, as well as independent scholars and writers. So you do not have to have an academic affiliation to apply to the fellowship programs. It is a residential fellowship program, so we don't have, some sort of requirement, but you're supposed to be in residence here at the library. The duration of these fellowships are anywhere from 4 to 11 months. Both the digital and the Kluge fellows are paid a $5,000 a month stipend, which sort of makes us in line with what NEH used to, pay their scholars. And you have up to 18 months to start. So once a selection is made, you can start your fellowship program within a year and a half to sort of, fit into the window. So there is a little wiggle room in terms of start dates. And lastly, and this will be a good segue when I go over to my colleague Mike, because he's going to talk about the application portal, is that our deadline is September 15th of this year. And so currently the application portal is open and we are receiving applications. And then again, it will close on September 15th. So thank you. And I will turn it over to my colleague, Michael.
Thanks, Travis. Good morning and afternoon, everyone. It's nice to hear from you all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you how to first reach the fellowship portal. And then after that, I will go into the portal and show you what it looks like to sort of make an application. So I've got a pathway here for you all. Under your search browser, all you have to do is type in Kluge Center and hit enter, and it should be the first result. You click on that, it'll bring you to right here about this program. It's all about the Kluge Center and who we are, what we do. You'll click on Chairs and Fellowships, brings you to the next site. And then you can see right here at the right in the center, talking about the applications are open for the 4 fellowship programs with the deadline of September 15th. Just go ahead and click on the first one or the digital studies, whichever one that you want of the 4 to apply to. For this example, we're going to just click on the Kluge Fellowships, and that brings you here. Kluge Fellowships. Just scroll all the way down, and at the bottom right where it says application deadline, hit access our online application portal here. That will bring you up to the home page for the fellowship program. Should say Kluge Center in real big light writing. So you have 2 options. Either you have your account already set up and you can just go right in and log in, or on the right side you can just create a new account. So either way, if you log in or you create a new account, that will bring you to the page right here, which we're now going to spend the rest of our time on. So it should bring you up to a new application immediately if you are coming in for the first time. So the first screen here is it just asks for consent to use this program, and the consent to the usage. You'll have to hit yes to consent. It asks you which of these 4 fellowships you want to apply to. You have to, if you want to apply to more than one, you're going to have to do 2 separate fellowship applications, just so you know. So we select the one that we want. We're just going to do digital. Okay. Your race and ethnicity, these are, you do not have to put this if you don't want to, but we do collect this information. It also does not affect anyone's selection or non-selection. It's purely for collection purposes. And you can put your sex and gender if you would like. In the next screen, we've got, we asked for a single paragraph abstract of what the proposed research is. We ask that you keep it to no more than 500 words. After that, you're going to go and explain how the Library of Congress and its collections will benefit your work. As Travis said earlier, one of the main criteria is the use of the library collections, and we have put it on the onus on the applicant to say which of these collections they would like to use and why. I believe Travis said earlier to please reach out to Library of Congress reference librarians before you apply to really get a broad sense of what collections they have, because like he said, we do have unprocessed collections that they would know about that maybe you might not. After that, you move on to the proposal. This is sort of the meat and potatoes of the actual fellowship application. Anything that's starred, you do have to fill out, including where you heard about this fellowship. If you heard about it through ISA, please say so. We'd like to know how many people actually heard about it through that conference or this webinar. We'll need the title of your proposal, your last name, first name, middle name, initial if you prefer. We do ask for your home address, cell and work phone number, and you can change the country code as appropriate. We do need an email address. You can provide a secondary one because I know several people, they work for home institutions that maybe they will finish a PhD program or a postdoc fellowship program. So if you want, also provide an email address that's more personal, Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, whatever you prefer. We need the country of citizenship, permanent residence. If they're the same, just put them the same. What your current position is, and the discipline department and the home institution. It does say if you don't have a home institution, write independent scholar. I would say probably 1/5 to 1/4 of our scholars and residents are independent scholars. So please do not feel like if you do not have a home institution that it will affect your application in a negative manner. It will not. We do need the address of your home institution. If you have one in the country. Finally, especially for the Kluge Fellowship Program, we do need to know the year, the month and year your PhD or terminal degree was awarded. This is because, like we said, with the Kluge Fellowship, you have to have a PhD and it has to be in the last 7 years to be able to be eligible for this program. We do give the ability, which language abilities that you have. The first is for English, because we do need people to be able to communicate in English here in the center. And then after that, we have other languages that you might have specialties in that you have the ability to fill out. It is required to ask how many months of residency you're seeking in the fellowship program that you're applying to. For the Kluge Fellowship, you can choose between 4 and 11 months. Same with the Kluge Fellowship in Digital Studies. 6 to 12 months for Larson, and only 2 for the Phillips. It is a straight 2-month fellowship for whoever is appointed. And then we need to know if you're willing to accept less than the desired number, and then type in your name in lieu of a signature. After that, we have places for you to attach a copy of your CV, of your project proposal, and your bibliography of works cited. And we do require that you send all 3 of these in to finish your application. And then finally, the reference letters. This creates a significant amount of questions for me throughout the year from people. So what I will say is, what happens is down here, you give the full name of your reference and their email. We ask for 2 of these references for this application. It used to be 3, but we've moved it to 2. And what will happen is when you hit submit for the entire application, emails will be sent to the 2 references from the system, asking them to fill out or send a letter up to 1,200 words. And if you look here, there are 8 bullet points of what we asked to be referenced in these letters of references. And so once you hit submit, it will send those letters out. And then one final word with the letters. Our application deadline for applicants is September 15th. We give a 2-week grace period for the reference letters to get those letters in. So that would be September 30th. So if they're not in by September 15th, please do not, worry that you will not be accepted for submission or, consideration. You do have that 2-week grace period in order to get those in order to get those reference letters in. And if they have any issues whatsoever, you can write to scholarly@loc.gov. It is an email box I monitor. And I am able, through that, if there are issues, I'm able to collect the reference letter and I'm able to manually input it in myself. So there are ways for us to make sure if there's any issues that all the information that you need is in there for your application. And you just hit save and finalize. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to create an actual thing. And then you are done. So with that, I will bring the floor back to you all.
Can I mention one thing, Mike, that I thought of while you were presenting? One of the questions is if you'll, receive less months than requested. We often find people think that if they ask for, less months, that they're more likely to get it. We do not take that into account. So if you want 11 months, apply for 11 months. Don't go to 4 because you think you're more likely to get it. We do not take that into account. So request the amount of months that you're looking for. We don't cut them. So don't think that, if you request less, it's more likely. Request the amount of months that you need.
Thank you, Travis. I was actually going to say that as well. So I thank you, Travis and Mike, both of you for walking us through that. Just a couple things I just want to reiterate at the end of this, because I think they're most important for the ISA kind of audience we have here. First of all, again, there is no citizenship requirement for our Kluge fellowships or our digital studies fellowship. Everyone is welcome to apply. Number two, take some time to think about what collections at the library will be useful to you. Make sure you're specifying specific things, contacting librarians, finding out what might not be processed, and mention those things in your application. We have 180 million items at the library. We're the largest library in the world. We probably have something that is related to your research, and dare I say something pretty cool related to your research. And so, from periodicals to, like Travis said, manuscripts and rare books, we have some really amazing, wonderful things, and we want people to be able to use them and to sponsor that research. And then finally, one other thing besides the fact that ask for the number of months you want, is that we did get this question a couple of times at ISA's conference, so I just wanted to say this here. The PhD requirement, if you are currently in your PhD program, we just ask that you have your PhD when the application closes. So if you are like defending in, August, that's okay. You can still apply for this upcoming cycle. Just make sure you have it in hand for when that application closes and you hit submit. I think that's everything that I wanted to mention. If we want to turn it over to questions, I can replace, I'm going to we have like a quick slide with our email, but I also noted that the information that I think will be sent out after the thing is also in the chat, which is super nice. Thank you for providing that.
Thank you so much, Sophia. So we have time to answer questions about the application process and the fellowships. And as a reminder, you can put your questions in the webinar chat or in the Q&A function, whichever is easier for you. So I do see a couple of questions already. One person asks about whether it would strengthen or weaken an application to include other DC holdings in one's bibliography, for example, the National Archives.
I think that's fine. People do it all the time. What we don't like to see is someone's like, I'm going to be based at the library and spend all my time at College Park. You can highlight that, there's other places around town, but, really do try to focus the main sort of, research at the library, but we're not going to, hold it against you if you go to archives. Yeah, so but just make sure that it's the Library of Congress's collection as the focus, and that's fine to sort of discuss how you have other opportunities to undertake research around town, but libraries where you sort of really need to be based.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So a question about selection criteria. One of the selection criteria is related to project completion feasibility. If our application proposal is related to a new book project, would you recommend framing the proposal as an article or chapter completion?
No, and we don't expect you to like finish the book while in residence. It's just like I think that's more speaking to your work plan. Some people say I'm going to come in 3 months and looked at, 80 boxes of unprocessed collections. No, you're not. I mean, so I think talk about what the ultimate product or goal is for that project, but it's more, I think, about your work plan while in residence, and sort of that you would be able to, not bite off too much, essentially just making sure that that work plan makes sense for the months requested and sort of what they were going to undertake.
I think like it's about being realistic in regards to how, like Travis said, how much you can complete while in residence. We have plenty of people who email us a way after and say, 5 years down the line, they finally finished the book that they were working on while they were here. We don't expect you to get it done in 3 months.
I just got a book from a scholar from a decade ago. So yeah,
It happens. We know how it is.
We're not going to track you down after your residency. Like, where's the product? No, again, I think just saying ultimately it would be a book, hopefully a few articles, that's fine. You know.
So, I mean, you've mentioned a little bit about scholarly output coming, out of the fellowship, but I'm wondering, are there any opportunities during the fellowship for public-facing engagement that the library supports or the center supports?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it sort of is on a case by case basis, but we do book talks with our scholars or panels if it makes sense. 3 scholars in residence, and there's sort of some overlap, and that might be a uh, interesting conversation. They have opportunities to write blogs for our website. We also do works in progress, which include the 1,400 alumni of the Kluge Center. So there's a number of different ways where we could sort of project that scholarship through our sort of channels.
One thing I will also add on the work in progress thing is it's actually a really I think one of the best things we offer too, because we invite library staff as well to those. So if for example somebody's been working in our science and business reading room, they might invite some of the staff from that who might be able to provide even more like recommendations based on seeing someone's work about like, hey, I found this collection and stuff like that. So yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. There is a question about the bibliography. How detailed is the bibliography expected to be?
I mean, what is it? It was 2 pages, Mike. I mean, we just want an overview that you've looked at items, right? There's sort of the narrative part that asks about the collections, and the bibliography is just showing, look, I've been in the catalog. These are the items I found. I spoke with someone, so just as long as you're showing that, you've looked and recognize items that you could be using is the main sort of point of that.
And that
Okay.
being said, the bibliography is limited to 3 pages, single spaced. So that does provide room for it to be very detailed if someone would like it to be.
Mhm. Okay. Do Library of Congress subscription databases count as collections we can use at the library? Most of them are library access only, and my institution has no subscription to them.
Yes, that's fine to highlight those things.
Okay, so yes. There is a question about how does the Kluge Fellowship and the Kluge Chair Fellowship differ from each other?
Yeah. So, okay. So when the Kluge Center was started 25 years ago, the way it was organized and is still organized today was with this idea of having more senior scholars who would be our Kluge chairs, and they're selected by a nomination process, except in the case of one chair, our Blumberg chair, which is an application. Those are generally scholars who have made a major contribution to their field, have, are beyond their like that 7-year period, etc. Um, for our fellows, that's more targeted. That was like the other half of this vision 25 years ago, being more early career scholars who maybe are turning their dissertation into a book, etc. And that was, like I said, this the expectation regarding what had been accomplished was significantly less, or not accomplished. You've already probably accomplished a lot getting a PhD, but I'll say in terms of like scholarly output is less than for our chairs. And the fellows would be by application rather than nominated by other members of their field. I will say to quickly note on the subject of the Blumberg Chair, actually, because some people on this call might actually be interested in that. The Blumberg Chair application is also listed on our website. That is open to people who are both scholars and practitioners who have some relation between, who study like the relation between astrobiology and the humanities. There's more, I will allow people to read more about it, but it is kind of unique in that it is structured as a chair is, but it is an application. So I believe the stipend is $12,000 a month, if I'm correct.
13.5.
13.5. There we go. It's a little bit more than our stipend for fellows, and it is a lot more than our stipend. And it is, it is a chair position at the library.
Okay. And do those have the same deadlines?
Our deadline, so the deadline for the Blumberg Chair is different. I would actually need to check on that. Usually it's here. I apologize for not knowing this off the top of my head. And I can also put this in the chat, the link to this. So the deadline is usually in October of each year.
Mhm.
Or sorry, we recently had it at December, sorry. This is more information. I think this will go out to everybody. This is the link to that chair. And it kind of goes over a little bit how this is kind of this unique position in the Kluge Center, because it's a partnership with NASA.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It also has like some of if you go on our YouTube and watch any of our events, it has some really wild, like cool events that we've gotten to do through this like partnership with NASA and the Blumberg chairs that we've had.
So, I don't see any more questions in the chat or the Q&A. So just a reminder, if you've been leaning towards asking a question, now would be a good time to put it in there to make sure it gets answered. One question I had was about was really like, how competitive are these applications? I'm assuming that that you receive a lot of applications.
It's typically about a 10% acceptance rate.
10%. Okay. All right, 10%. That's helpful. Let's see. We'll just give one more moment to see if there are any additional questions.
And maybe, and Travis and Mike, please feel free to add on to this. But I would say what I have heard from both of you, one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people with the application is that collections issue. That's why we kind of stress it so frequently, because people won't specify like exact collections they'd be working with. And they kind of might mention something more broad, like a reading room, but rather than, and we are looking for like specific collections since it is a residential research fellowship. Okay, there's one additional question. It looks like.
Yeah, so we got a few more questions. So
Oh,
thank
great.
you for those. What is the review process and the timeline like once you've submitted your application?
Well, that's a good question. So historically, we worked with National Endowment for the Humanities on our selection process, and don't think that's happening this year. That's up in the air. I'm getting lunch with one of them next week. But yeah, so typically, the timeline is we would host panels in January of early next year, and hopefully would have some sort of decision usually by March. Again, that's typically we'd let people know by March. And then again, hosting our panels like early in the year. And yeah, that might just look a little different this year, but that's the plan as of now. So yeah.
Okay. Can you offer any tips for how to make one's application stand out in a competitive pool, amongst a competitive pool of applicants?
Do you want to talk about the video, Mike, or?
Yeah, we do have a video where we go pretty extensively into that process actually. And it is on the homepage of the portal. Let me just share my screen again real quick. When you go onto that portal, you will.
It's also on the homepage of the Kluge Center website too.
Mhm.
So it's also there. So it's at the Kluge Center website, and it's also here at the in the portal. When you've hit home, this pops up, and then you can watch the webinar, or you can just read the transcript of it if you prefer to do that. And that will have some more tips on how to make it a a competitive thing. There's also, like we've said, you got to keep the collections that you want to access at the library in the application itself.
Mm. And is this video one of the resources that you've given us to mail out? I believe it is, but I just wanted to confirm. Yes, okay.
Yeah, so it should be it's on that like fellowship page. If you click that, it should pop up automatically.
Okay, and so everybody who's registered is going to receive some resources from the Kluge Center, and so that video will be in there.
Mhm.
And the last question that I see is, who would be the person to reach out to frame my application for suggestions in terms of the LOC collection? So you mentioned ask a librarian.
Yeah, that's really going to be the best sort of way. That's what most of the custodial divisions are asking, since we're sort of, so data driven now, just to see how many people are actually making formal requests. So if you go to ask a librarian, like I said, there's someone behind the scenes that will put you in contact with the reference staff that is specific to either that collection or sort of topic for you. And they're really great about getting back into contact. The fact that they know that you're applying to the Kluge fellowships, they know that you're a serious researcher, they love working with like Kluge scholars, so they'll be excited that you're reaching out and asking questions about the collections, and like letting them help you sort of with the application.
Yeah, definitely be sure to mention that that's one of the reasons why you're asking is because you're applying to a Kluge fellowship. And secondly, to kind of build off of what Travis said, uh, the the library reading rooms are notoriously confusing, how things are kind of organized at the library. And one of the perks of Ask a Librarian is they can kind of funnel you into the right spot for what you're interested in, because you might not automatically like go there. So, if for some reason you think it's in what you're looking for might be a manuscript, say you contact the manuscripts, ask a librarian. If that's not right, they can forward you to the right place. And that's why we always say to make that, human connection, as Travis said, because if you're just kind of searching the catalog, it might not be as useful or easy as just asking the question.
Mhm.
The Ask a Librarian feature also allows the staff to keep track of these requests so they don't sort of fall through the cracks and into
Yeah.
the ether. So it really is helpful if you do it through the Ask a Librarian.
Okay. Does the fellowship support projects that are in their very initial stage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I mean, that's the thing, especially right, using the collections, that's typically early stages of doing, research, sort of archival work. So yeah, I mean, we fund some things where someone's like, I'm finishing my book and I just need to make some updates to, I just started a new project and I really need to get into, the archives to see what I can find. So we fund project all along that sort of, that timeline of sort of start to finish.
Yeah, we've had scholars that spend the entirety of their time here at the Kluge Center literally just hoovering information from the library.
And I think like as we said before, it's less about, I know that this is exactly the product that is going to come out of this, and more, this is the research I want to complete in the time that I have at the center. This is realistically what I can do and what I would like to look at in order to, hopefully produce a book, X and Y.
Mm-hmm. There's a question asking if there are any fellowships available for people who hold a master's degree.
So the Digital Studies Fellowship does not have a terminal degree requirement. All of our other programs do. So if you could fit it into that framework of digital studies, you would be able to, because again, that's the one program where we have that's not doesn't have a terminal degree requirement.
One other
Okay.
thing we can mention is if you're getting if you are in a PhD program or receiving funding from AHRC,
ESRC or AHRC in the
yeah.
UK, they have a fellowship program that they manage, but individuals come through that program and are at the Kluge Center 3 months to 6 months. And so again, if you have funding from AHRC or ESRC under the UKRI, you're available to apply to what's called the International Placement Scheme. But it's the IVS fellowship. So again, that process is managed through the AHRC. ESRC funded individuals can also apply through the AHRC, but they manage sort of that process. But that's another way to sort of get to the center if you're, about 50% of those individuals are doctoral candidates.
Mhm.
So there are other programs. I would encourage that person to look at our partnership fellowship page, because some of our partners also we don't manage those selection processes, but some of those don't require a terminal degree.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question about including a work plan as part of the application process. Is that something that's helpful to include?
I think so. Just, having sit on 13 years of panels, often, if there's a good work plan in there, they're not going to question if the individual is going to have sort of time to undertake sort of the project. I think it doesn't need to be too extensive, but at least show that you're thinking about how you're going to use your time. And that also helps, when we're looking at someone's requesting 11 months, does it make sense, based off of their work plan or.
Mm-hmm. And Travis, you've mentioned panels a few times. Is this part of the review process?
Yeah, yeah. So that would be part of our review process when we're making selections.
Okay. All right. So you are actively involved in making. Okay. All right. So that's helpful. So we have somebody up from the inside here that's giving tips. So I don't see any other questions at this time. And we will be following up to share information with all of the people who registered for today's event. And we'll also be sharing the recording once it's been edited. Are there any final thoughts, Sophia, Michael, or Travis, that you'd like to share before we conclude today's session?
Yes, thank you for
Yeah,
taking the
truly.
time at ISA to sort of help arrange this and set it up. We really appreciate it.
And we're
Agreed.
really excited to review to see everyone's applications.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sophia, Michael, and Travis, and to everybody for your questions. And good luck with your applications. All right. Have a great day,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.